it's called a for loop. So let's go ahead and we'll just remove this, what we've done so far. So we'll keep this variable a here, a equal to 0. Actually, we'll delete that a variable, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up the for loop. The for loop looks like so. We write for with the brackets, and then do the spike brackets like that. And then this, the difference of the for loop is it doesn't actually take a Boolean value in here. The for loop needs to take 3 parameters, each separated by semicolons. So the first parameter it's going to take is either an existing variable and an initial value, or we can initialize a variable inside the for loop. So we can make an integer called a and set it equal to 0. Then we'll put a semicolon. That's the first condition we need to set up. So the first condition inside the for loop is setting up a variable and making it equal to something. The second condition inside a for loop is setting the condition for the loop to run. For example, in that while loop just now, we said whilst a is less than 100, and then we did a is less than 1,000. We can go ahead and write whilst a is less than 100, for example, and then another semicolon. And then the final parameter we have to do is it's not necessary, but obviously if we don't want the loop to run infinitely, the final parameter is in what way we want to increment or decrement the value that we've initialized here. So we're going to say a++. So this is our fully functioning for loop. So the first thing we do is initialize a variable, give it a value. The second thing we do is give a condition for the loop to run. And the third thing we do is increment or decrement the number. So let's go ahead and just system out println. Print out the value of a. And you'll see we don't need to increment it manually because it's doing it in the for loop. Each iteration of the for loop, it's going to check for this condition here. And then at the end of each for loop, at the end of the code running in here, it's just going to increment it the way we've told it to. So you can see it did the exact same thing, but just in a different form of syntax here. And there's for loops are useful for when we start looking at arrays, which we will do soon. But for now, this example is good enough. We initialize a variable, we give it a condition, and then we can plus or minus values to it. And you're not limited to adding 1. There's another way you can increment numbers. If you just want to increment 1, you do the plus plus. If you want to increment a certain value to it, you can put plus equals and then a number. And that's basically this plus equals here. You can also do minus equals. The plus equals basically says add the number on the left, add the number on the right, sorry, to the number to the variable on the left. And if we run this here, adding 2 at a time, you'll see we only get the even numbers here because we're adding 2 at a time, obviously. So that's how we do the for loop. And there's one final loop going back to the first while loop that we had. There's one final loop I want to show you, and that is the do while loop. And the do while loop is slightly different from the while loop. The do while loop basically makes sure the code inside the while loop is run at least once, regardless of whether the condition is met or not. So let's go ahead and make an integer a equal to 10. And let's go ahead and set up the do while loop. So we can say do with no, the word do doesn't need any parameters here, we just have the spike brackets. But then at the end of the spike brackets here, we do need to set up the while condition. So after this ending spike bracket, we can write while, and then give a condition. So we can say while a is less than 10, and then we can put a semicolon. So you can read this as do the code inside the brackets here, while this condition is equal to true. So why is this one useful compared to the normal while loop? Well, like I said, it's because the code is run regardless of whether the initial condition was met or not. So let's go ahead and add system out println. Ooh, right, hello world. Let's remove this loop finish down here. So as you can see, if this was a normal while loop, the condition a is less than 10 would be false, because a is equal to 10 and 10 is not less than 10. So if this was a normal while loop, if this was up here, for example. Let's go ahead and run that. You can see that nothing appears because while this condition is met and this condition isn't met because 10 is not less than 10, this code never runs here. So if we just move that back down there, the do part of the loop basically ensures this code is run at least once before checking this. It basically means the code is run and then the condition is checked, as opposed to the condition checked and then the code is run. So if we run this, we'll see we get the hello world printed out. So we say do the hello world statement here, and now check if this statement's true, and then it says, okay, this condition isn't met, we're not going to do the loop again, and then we move to the code down here. So that is the difference between the while loop and the do while loop, and also the for loop.